Welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Abbie Richie. I'm the CEO and founder of Senior Savvy, and you can find me right here every Tuesday talking with people who are engaged in the age tech innovation space. I got to say, it is a great place to be. I'm so excited for my guest, but before I bring her on, I want to go ahead and run the intro. I am thrilled to have Laurie Orlov back on Tech Tuesday. Welcome back to the show, Laurie.
Thanks so much for having me, Abbie. Good to see you.
You too. You too. We've talked on and off for the past several years, and I had you on, I think it was last year, maybe, talk about technology, and you gain a ton of traction and notoriety from your market report. So, but before we talk about that, can you please tell us and tell the viewers how long you've been writing the report for and what the focus and intention is, please?
You're talking about my website or the report itself?
The report itself.
Okay, it typically takes me a couple of months to update that report. I start in December, late November and December, and then my goal is to publish it in January. And I've been doing it now for 13 years. So it's a once a year kind of thing, trying to basically each time add new companies into the report that weren't there previously, take some companies out that may be no longer as important as they once were. So it's a project every year, and I spend a lot of quality time on it. But it's very important, I think, to give a perspective on what are the important trends in the technology industry for older adults, and what are the companies that are beginning to matter.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you do, because like so many of us, we pour over it. Mm-hmm. And so tell us also about the website, about the origins of that, please.
Yes. In 2009, I wasn't sure what to do with my life. I had been a Forrester analyst for some number of years, and I had been in IT for a number of years. And I ran into Mary Furlong at an event in Florida, and she said that the industry of technology for older adults needed an analyst.
Okay.
And so that was in 2009. I published my first version of this market overview. I took on my first clients to give strategy advice to, and I gave my first speech, 2009.
Excellent, excellent. And so do you still do a lot of speeches now?
Yeah, I do a couple of them a year. I'm trying to talk more online and travel less. I did do about 3 or 4 this past year. Like I said, my motivation is really to, because of the fact that we can do this kind of thing on the internet, it makes a lot less sense for me to run around like a chicken.
100% agree with you, especially as a mom of 2. This just makes a ton of sense for me as well. So I appreciate that. Now, as I was reading through your report, the first topic that really stuck out to me, which is one of my passion topics, is about user experience deterioration, which makes me crazy. So I want to hear from your perspective what that means to you, how it's impacting technology and the people that we're serving as older adults.
Well, I think it's important to note that what's happened to our user experience in the past pretty much 5 years is it's become extremely fragmented. So we have our devices like this. We have a device like this. We have this
the computer. Yep.
We have so we have all those interfaces, and we might have more than one of a mobile device. We might have a smartwatch. So all of that has created a fragmented user experience. And what's most interesting to me is for the same exact application or app, it's different on each of those devices. So that's one point. The second point is that the percentage of older adults who are now using smartphones has grown into the sort of 70+% range. It may be higher than that. The next survey may show that it's higher. The clamshell type flip phones are going the way of the dodo bird, partly because what you can do on a smartphone in terms of communicating with your families and getting information and having a mobile device that you can take pictures of of what you see and who you meet. All of that has contributed to the fact that smartphone ownership is up, but competency may not be up. It certainly may not be up as much as ownership. And add to that the fact that the market has fragmented into multiple devices for the same products. My favorite is Gmail. It looks different wherever you go. The smaller the interface, the more bizarre it looks. We're all out there using these applications and struggling because we may not find where on the screen you're supposed to tap. How can you make things louder? How can you make them bigger? We're not born knowing this information. And so with the fragmentation of the technology market itself into multiple device formats, and with the growing adoption of technology by older adults experiencing all those formats, it's become quite difficult. And there are a lot of specific examples I could give about that fragmentation, but I'll let you decide how much detail you want me to go into.
I think it is such an important topic. And so I'm happy to talk about this in detail because, when I'm teaching older adults about their devices, I always say that these things, they're like, we get them like the baby when we leave the hospital. There's no owner's manual at all. Okay. Like you have to go looking for it. You need to ask trusted sources for it. And so Senior Savvy is a trusted source for teaching you. But a lot of times the devices are handed to someone and maybe they're passed down, but they're not given any instruction and they're not taught how to personalize it so that it meets their needs, because the way a business owner or a business professional uses a device is going to be very, very different than an older adult. So,
right.
It's not okay to assume that the way it comes factory made is going to work for everyone. So that's a lot of what we focus on, is like taking ownership of it, make the font bigger, rearrange the furniture, as I say, and just move the apps around, because this is precious real estate, what's on your homepage. And like, I just think that there's such a gap in this area. It's not just with our phones though, really and truly, like it's all technology. The user interface has been deteriorated so much. I think it's from, who is writing these manuals, right?
Well, it's who's writing the software is the real problem. We don't care about the manuals if the software was intuitive and we were able to figure out what it did just by looking at it. But you see so many people poking and pounding at screens and trying to get something to happen that I would say the word intuitive does not apply to most of the software market. And if you grow up with it, and let's say you're 13 or 10 or 17, you don't understand what I'm talking about. But if you're an older adult who is not a adept and not super well trained in how to use devices, and you're not like I am, if I don't know the answer to a question, I poke around the internet to a forum and I find the answer I'm looking for. But most people don't do that. So I think something's really happened that's not a good thing. And if you just look at the installation process for new applications or bringing up a new device, a lot of people become afraid to get a new phone because of the process of startup. The password nightmare is a nightmare, I think, pretty much for everybody. The size issue of icons on screens and on devices, and on websites, and how many websites have little chat windows at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and how many don't have anything. And there you are looking at it and trying to figure out what to do. So I think it's made us all at one level or another feel less competent technically than we want to feel. And I think that's a shame. And there's got to be some solutions to that, which is why my next research report will be about the user experience, the tech user experience, and how to make it better.
I can't wait to read it. And, what I wanted to say was, even when I'm working with people and let's say that they knew how everything worked 10 years ago, well, everything changes, right? So even if you were an IT specialist, even if, you used to know, it's just a matter of like just staying up to speed with the changes and actually having a lot of grace, because there's some of these things are not intuitive, like you said. Some of them require a little bit of explanation. If you don't have a trusted resource like Senior Savvy, then you don't know how to go into a forum, And by the way, if you are in that forum, please don't call any phone numbers, okay? And so, because your safety is very important. The safety of older adults that we're serving is very, very important. So, oh boy, I could talk about this user experience situation all day long, but I want to move into the next area that makes me cuckoo, and you touched on it, and that is the password. So like, I'm so passionate about it. If you see me like this, it's because like I'm just so passionate about this topic, because there's not a good answer. Well, there is, and that has to do with the password manager. But so many older adults distrust using a password manager. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that they get scammed, right?
Right. It's not just because of their passwords. I mean, they're scammed in so many ways. It's become really quite amazing what you can do in the scammer world. And I actually think that scammer innovation outpaces tech innovation in general. I think they have become very, very clever. And the most clever thing they've done in the past year or two is voice scamming. So they can grab a print of your voice because you've been on the internet somewheres where you actually could be heard, just like we're being heard today, right? Mm-hmm. Our voice is essentially able to be grabbed and imprinted somewheres by a technology scammer who then turns around and uses that imprint to contact somebody in our network and potentially ask them for money, impersonating us. Mm-hmm. And this is, I think that's probably the most scam innovation I've seen in the past few years is grabbing the voice. But there's every form of scams going on today. Particularly, there's healthcare scams. Our data is being used by scammers for all kinds of reasons, including our healthcare information. So I would say the statistic I had is 75% of adults reported experiencing a scam attempt in the past 2 years. And healthcare data breaches are now 1.54 per day, worse in 2023 than they were in 2022. And older adults are 6 times more likely than younger adults to report losing money on a tech support scam. So, and I already talked to you about AI and voice imposters. And so I think the scam world, for every innovation we see in the general marketplace of technology, the scammers are ahead. They're running ahead. And and I think the voice one is the greatest example of that in the past year or two.
Amazing. Like, I have not heard about that at all, but of course, when you mentioned that you think that people have been scammed or they report being scammed in the past 2 years, I would say in the past 2 days, it's like in the past 2 days. So like there are scam attempts all the time. And like you mentioned earlier, the prevalence of it is so much more frequent than it is tech innovation. Scam innovation is much more frequent because actually there's no legislation around it, right? It cannot be tracked. And the other thing is it's just so fast and cheap and easy to create a public email address and get your scam on, right?
Get your scam on, yeah. There is an attempt to regulate it, and but it's flimsy. The Federal Trade Commission keeps track of how many people are scammed, but they don't necessarily do anything that we can detect to prevent it. And whenever you talk about bringing legislation before and regulating scammers, if you start looking around for what's been attempted in recent years to regulate spam and scam and identity theft and health data violations, it's just not, it's inadequate. The pace is too slow, and everybody wants to argue about it when they're talking about it in Congress. So I'd say we have a problem.
On a purely education status, I always teach my students, you can head to the ftc.gov. They have a really good scam reporting process. It's detailed. Yes. The other thing I teach my students is to head to the aarp.org website, type in scam or fraud, and there's a phone number that you can call to report a scam. And you can also look up scams that are happening right now in your area and just be aware, because there's no real way to legislate it, but there are ways to be aware of it. And I think awareness and avoidance are the key factors here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with that.
Now, go ahead.
No, that was all I was going to say about scams. I think we have a real problem out there. I've been on the FTC website and I've looked at scam reporting. That's how I have the statistics I've already told you. And so reporting is good. Prevention is poor. And some of the players that we would want to be more involved in protecting us, which are the telephone carriers that we're using to make phone calls and to speak, the big carriers out there, or the big internet service providers, or the big tech companies. We want them to do something to protect us from scams. And I don't see enough happening.
I don't see enough happening, and I really don't see a solution in that area at all. And until people become so aware of it that it becomes, it's not a marketplace anymore. It's not a business for the scammers anymore. So,
oh, well, good luck on that. Sorry, I'm a little cynical in my.
I know, I am too.
Yeah.
I am too, because
Right.
I see it happening so much. So, that's definitely another topic that I'm very passionate about. And, when I was at CES this year, I looked around. I wanted to see several things. Age tech. Second to that, password security for the daily consumer, and then, that's fun. And then the other thing is printer technology, but I'm not going to talk about printer technology today, okay? Because I don't think that that's really appropriate. But boy, oh boy, could that do with some innovation. But let's backtrack just a bit and talk about some CES standouts. So what did you see at CES that was innovative and really piqued your interest?
Well, I wrote 2 blog posts on this, which since you're going to put up my website at the end, people can take a look at them. But the 2 products that actually I thought were worth mentioning was a company called Valencell, Valencell, which makes a cuffless blood pressure product. And we're getting to the stage now where your vitals they have a fingertip blood pressure monitor, which I think is an amazing innovation. The other one that I think has been talked about a lot, and maybe was at the ARP Tech event at CES, is a product called Zibrio Advantage, which is a scale. And you get on this scale, and it can offer all kinds of information for you, the person standing on the scale, or for your families and caregivers, about how your balance is, what your likelihood of falling, and your health status that can come from that information that they get from the scale. So those are 2 that I mentioned. I did talk about, 18 different companies in my 2 blog posts. A lot of them were in what I would think of as the dementia space, or the accessibility or disability space. There was a lot of innovation in the accessibility and disability. I don't know if that's if the reason for that is because the baby boomers are aging into the era of potentially having to live with various disabilities. But anyway, there was a number of them, and like I said, I wrote about 18 of them. I think in general, CES is what it is. There's people there from all over the world. There are people there with products that are actually not in the market yet. They're just a demo. And some of them will never appear in the market. So that's an important thing to understand about CES. It's a trade show. It is not for consumers, despite its old name, the Consumer Electronics Show. It is a trade show for the tech industry. And it's an impressive trade show. And if you go and start looking at the websites related to CES, the CTA website, and everything you can find about CES, you'll learn about a lot of technologies that you wouldn't have imagined were being invented. And some of them you can see start soon in retail. You can see transparent TVs and cars that get up and do everything. But I would say it's not a trade show for us, the consumer, but it is an important trade show, because what gets introduced at CES, often, if it's really good stuff, will show up in the next year or 2 in the marketplace, and we'll be able to benefit from it. And if you think about the age tech world, almost everything that is visible now in the age tech world was at one point or another demoed at a trade show like CES.
Yes, it was. In fact, if you next time you attend CES, they do have a hall of flops down in Eureka Park, where you could go and you can look at everything that flopped, which I think is a huge learning lesson. As a fourth generation entrepreneur, I find that there's value in failure, constantly refining your process. So there's the hall of flops in Eureka Park. I do think that, like you said, when it comes to accessibility, that were so many more products represented this year than in the past. I know that Stephen Uwell of the CTA has a deep interest in that as well. And I think it's a combination of two things. One, yes, there's absolutely baby boomers that are aging. But the other thing that I find just from interviewing these innovators is that they've either experienced it firsthand or they've experienced it with their parents, right? Where, for instance, with Camino Robotics, that is the first smart walker. And that was developed because the founder saw his father struggling with the traditional walker and it just being big and bulky and not actually collecting any data. And then when it comes to other products, there was SingFit that was there. And then you also mentioned Zibrio, which actually was designed for astronauts to capture that information for astronauts. But I am so happy personally when I see products start in Eureka Park and then they make it to the Age Tech Innovation Space the following year, because it's like, yes, they have something, yes, they can develop it, yes, there's a market for it, and let's just bring more eyeballs to it. Like, it's really fascinating to me.
I also think it's interesting if you look at the disability related markets and you think about 15 years ago or 10 years ago, how cumbersome it was to be a person with limited hearing or low vision. You had to spend a lot of money for devices to make to enable you to function in the market. And if you think about today's world, where you have hearables, kind of like what you're wearing in your ear, that can actually mask out noise when you're in a crowded room and leave you only hearing the conversation. Or you think about apps and offerings for people with low vision or no vision, so that they can walk around and identify everything around them just by waving their phone. They can identify everything that's in their way or what it looks like. And I think it's remarkable. And I have a friend who I've known for many years who is blind. And she would say that the ability to gain great competence in dealing with your life with the technology today compared to 20 years ago, when you actually had to go spend a lot of money or go to websites that were geared specifically towards people who are blind. The other thing I would say is really important, and for people who use devices like iPhones and Android phones and so forth, and any application, there's a category on those websites that's called the accessibility section. And in the accessibility section, you can learn about the features of your device that enable you to brighten the screen, change the contrast, up the volume, and do a wide variety of things that make it very useful if you have any limitations in those areas. Most people don't think about that. And one of my frustrations, and part of the thing I'm going to deal with in this next report, is that in my view, the accessibility screen should be presented to you when you bring up the new product. You walk out of the store. In the store, they help you start it up. There you go. You've got your device. It should come up with accessibility features, and you should have to turn them off, not the other way around. Today, we have to turn them on.
That's a great point. Like, it's a default that it's on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good point. I was just speaking yesterday with Rebecca from Roboca. I don't know, Rebecca? Yeah, Roboca. When you're lifting up your phone, because there's a low vision app that you can use so that your phone can help you figure out what it is you're looking for, and it's completely adaptive. And I love that solution because the hearing aid, and let's just say the ADA, when it comes to hearing and sight, has been highly underdeveloped for years, dark age-ish. And so the more that people can come up with solutions to help people with low vision, with low hearing loss, is is huge. And when I talk to people, I'm just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming up with this, because what's out there has been so ineffective,
Mediocre.
right?
Mediocre.
Mediocre. Another thing that I saw that just like completely impressed me, and I might talk about this all year long, which is OTC hearing aids, but these are not your previous hearing aids. These are the ones that match what you get when you go to the audiologist in terms of technology. And this is just going to improve. And as people age, there are going to be less audiologists that are going to be able to serve this massive aging population. So yeah, as you can tell, really impressed.
We've entered the world of self-service in terms of hearing aids. And you can actually, if you put on headphones, you can actually test your own hearing.
Yes.
Quite accurately. And you can identify what degree of hearing aid you potentially need, short of being 100% without hearing, in which case you probably need to speak to somebody.
Yes, it's really designed for mild to moderate, but there is an app that goes along with it, and it's called the Tuned In app, and that was featured on in the Age Tech innovation space, the Tuned app, because of how you can get an accurate tuning of your hearing aids by using this app, which I think is phenomenal. Just phenomenal. I went through it myself. I tried it out. Totally phenomenal. I can't wait to see where that goes. Well, with just a couple more minutes left, I want to talk about the future role of AI. So would you tell us how you envision the future role of AI? And I'll put reverberation on that, but we're just going to pass that for right now.
So the future role of AI. Well, I think AI is a major innovation. It was when it was first launched as ChatGPT in the public market where we could see it. That was the fastest adoption of any tech innovation ever.
Really?
Yeah. So at least so far. Why was it so remarkable? It was remarkable because for the first time, you could actually have a conversation with the technology that remembered the last thing you said and enabled you to ask a follow-on question that was related to the last thing you said. That was sort of part A. Then what we started, so that's what I would call conversational AI. At the same time, another type of AI emerged and has actually been around for some time called the machine learning aspect of AI, which can examine a great amount of data. And if you're lucky, it's all data about you, and offer insights about possible strategies and ways to respond to a particular question, that machine learning capability. That's as important as conversational AI. And more to the point, you have no idea where it is. It's in everything. Everything you're interacting with has the capability now to remember your last interaction. Whether it does a good job of that, that's a whole other kettle of potatoes. But the ability to remember your last interaction and derive meaning from that you can then use in a subsequent question or interaction or a decision that you need to make, especially the future of this related to healthcare it's transformative. We're in a stage right now where I would call it the congressional agitation stage, where they're basically looking at, how can we regulate this? How can we slow this down? How can we protect everybody? People are being presented information that's really hallucinations. It's not the right information. We're doing terrible things, awful. And the media has run with that. In the past 5 or 6 months, they sort of made hay out of that. But that has nothing to do with the future benefit of this technology in your life and the lives of older adults. And I have a few examples of that about what may happen in the next 5 years, and I'll just run through those really quickly. In the future, we're definitely going to see AI helping us to center on individuals and helping with self-care. It's going to become more conversational than it is now. It's going to become more predictive than it is now. That's what we want. We want data to be used about us that predicts a possible change in the future, just like we talked about with the Zibrio scale. It's going to help us oversee our homes. It's going to provide us with guidance in terms of our finances and how to avoid making major mistakes. And we're going to have access at some point to a personalized avatar, an image we can see on a screen, have the conversation with, and get that advice. we have to go through the panic period we're in right now, where everybody is basically saying, AI, AI, it's awful. But it's very important, and it's going to have some big changes.
Yeah, yeah, love it, love it. Thank you so much. I feel like we could just talk on all day, and perhaps after your next report comes out, let's pick this up again. There's so much wisdom that we can glean from it and apply in senior living and with the older adults that we are serving every day. Well, Laurie, how can people get in touch with you to find out more information?
Well, I think we've talked about my website, which is ageinplacetech.com. There it is. So going to that site, if you want to send me a note, you can click on the contact us and send a note that way. And then I would say search for me on LinkedIn. I post once a week on LinkedIn. I post a blog post, and I'm around. I'm I'm speaking here and there, hopefully through the internet and not necessarily going there, but sometimes I actually show up. So
Me too. Me too, Laurie. Me too. It has been an honor to have you back on. I know that our audience just loves to hear from you, and I'm very thankful for everyone that chatted it up today and had their opinions and let us know that you were there listening. Thank you, and we will see you all back here next week.